Another controversial exit at the White House. The press secretary has announced that President Donald Trump has decided his chief strategist is out. CGTN's White House correspondent Jessica Stone is joining us. Jessica, Steve Bannon, he's certainly been a lightning rod in recent days, publicly contradicting the president on policy. Is this any real surprise?
Not really. And, you know, this is the sixth person who's left the White House in just the past couple of months, and this is only a 7-month-old administration here in the United States. Not a surprise, because we've also seen reporting from the New York Times that Bannon gave his resignation to the president as early as August 7th, and that in the intervening weeks, Trump was really weighing whether to let him go. The White House statement that we got just a couple of hours ago says this, quote, "White House Chief of Staff John Kelly and Steve Bannon have mutually agreed today would be Steve's last day. We are grateful for his service and wish him the best." Now, as you mentioned, this exit coming on the heels of a very controversial and provocative interview that Steve Bannon gave to the American Prospect, which is a progressive magazine. He literally called up the writer and gave him all of his thoughts. Those included some really pretty significant contradictions with the White House on their policy in East Asia, specifically on the DPRK. And I'll quote some of them to you now. Trump's advisor saying, quote, "There is no military solution to the DPRK standoff. This comes despite Trump's threats, for fire and fury to be the consequence if Pyongyang were to launch an attack against the U.S. homeland." And Bannon emphasized, literally taking the leverage out of the president's strategy, there is no military solution here. They got us. In that same interview, he took some shots at China, saying this, declaring a U.S. economic war against China, saying that the economic war is everything. He said the U.S. needs to be maniacally focused on that. And in response, Susan, China says no one wins with a trade war, but really very few in Washington are surprised that the president did this, let him go, because how could he stomach having a chief strategist, one of his subordinates, contradicting him so publicly?
So he's widely credited with harnessing the votes of the white working class and the alt-right during the election.
Yeah.
How big of a loss will this be for President Trump moving forward?
Well, I think we're going to have to see, but there is a danger that Bannon's previous media operation, the Breitbart online news magazine, which is now declared war on the Trump White House on Twitter, that they will then become an anti-Trump publication. We'll have to see if that happens, but there's no question that Bannon was highly divisive in the White House, taking stances against the National Security Advisor, Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of the president. And I want to get to something he recently said on race in the light of the events we saw in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend. He said this, "I want them to talk about racism every day. If the left is focused on race and identity and we go with economic nationalism, we can crush the Democrats." So a record of division, ultimately meaning his ouster.
Jessica Stone live at the White House.